Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Parade People podcast. First and foremost, I want to apologize for our large gap in uploads. We did record a third episode, but I don't know. God hates us, I guess, and that didn't end up getting released properly. It crashed or got corrupted, or I don't know what happened. But in the upload process, it just didn't go through. And by the time we had it figured out, it was the parade. But yeah, and then after the parade, that went into my final week of school. And then it was the holidays. So, it's been quite busy for us, so we haven't had a chance to record a overview episode of the 2024 parade, so we're getting that done today. And I also want to mention that, unfortunately, Apple decided he doesn't want to participate in the podcast anymore, but thankfully, Harris still does, so it's just us two now.
Yes, I'm very excited to be back. Like he said, we apologize for the large gap in our uploads. It was a very busy holiday season for the both of us. So we do truly apologize for that.
But yeah, I guess without further ado, we can get into the 2024 parade. I guess I want to start by saying that I think in previous episodes I was saying that I was very pumped for this parade because everything that I've seen, it gave the indication that it was going to be an incredible parade, and I think it's safe to say that it definitely passed my expectations by a loss.
Yeah, it for sure did pass my expectations a lot. Even though they had just under an inch of rain. I think you said 0.86 at some point, a rain that they had. It was a great parade. I didn't really see any accidents with any performance groups or anything. So it was a it was honestly a great parade despite the weather that they had to overcome that day.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the parade was made better because of the rain. I think all the participants had that mindset that the rain's not going to stop us, so let's give them the best show we can. And I think in instances like this, they really just put on a great show, even uh, even with the weather.
Indeed, it was. They came with that mindset of, hey, it's gonna be a little damp, but we're gonna bring our A game, and we're gonna be on top of it.
So without further ado, I guess we can start with. We're just gonna be going over a general overview of the parade and the different elements, and just talking about our favorites. So first up is the balloons, and first and foremost, we should mention the elephant in the room is that a no balloon this year, extraordinary Nora, and the Elf on the Shelf, unfortunately, was grounded because of the forecasted winds, which ended up being not all that strong. But regardless, she was unfortunately pulled from the lineup this year.
Yes, it was. It was a big surprise to everyone when it came to Inflation Day, which is always the Wednesday before the parade, which also is the day before the parade. When we saw Extraordinary Nora and the Elf on the Shelf at the top of 81st Street, which was a little bit of a surprise to everybody. Everybody was like, "Wait, what? What's going on? Is there an element that she's going to be behind? What kind of float? Blah blah blah." There was all these kind of theories and stuff like that. Until we learned that Macy's had decided the day before the parade that they would evidently ground the balloon. So they had a bunch of cameras set up in front of 81st Street to kind of get a pre-recorded tape for the spot that she would appear in during the parade.
And the reason she was removed, from what we've been hearing from handlers who were on the scene, is that at Balloon Fest, it was a bit of a windy day, and she had like a lot of trouble turning corners. I don't know if it was the fault of
It
the handler, the way
it
the pit.
was it was kind of it was kind of the what I was told. It was kind of the captain's fault for not having the handlers in the correct position for that balloon.
So yeah, unfortunately, because of the weather combined with the positioning of the flight management under the balloon at Balloon Fest, it didn't quite work out. But I'll be honest, I wasn't too upset about the balloon being removed. If it was someone
Hmm.
like, say, Goku, I'd be a bit more upset because I guess Nora was just one of those balloons that was like, yeah, it's a balloon bus. Still, speaking of Nora, I do think it was an absolutely gorgeous balloon, and it's still sad that she
Indeed, it
wasn't able to
was.
make it.
Yeah. So one of one of the things with Macy's is Nora flew her outdoor test flight, which is Balloon Fest, with one utility vehicle, and with how bad the balloon was blowing around with the position of the handlers, she evidently failed her balloon test flight for Balloon Fest. And then shortly after, Macy's added a second utility vehicle to that balloon and failed that test. So basically, New York City approved of the balloon, but Macy's knew it was going to be a big safety concern.
Yeah, and I can understand why they pulled it. Then if it did go down the route and it was damaged, then they run the risk of damaging the balloon and having to fix it. And so I guess they just decided they saved themselves a headache and just have her make a pre-recorded appearance on the telecast.
Which came between a technical difficulty during the parade, but we'll get into that later.
But yeah, in terms of other balloons, absolutely one of the I think the coolest balloons that was ever introduced into the parade was the third version of Spider-Man. Just an absolutely phenomenal balloon all around.
Yes, indeed. Spider Man was a great balloon that Macy's had decided to return to the parade this past year. I was very hyped to see Spider Man back. It was very cool to finally see him back in the parade, flying down 34th Street once again. It was absolutely amazing.
And on the topic of two utility vehicles, Spider-Man also had two utility vehicles this year, which I think he only had one in Balloon Fest, so I guess he was having issues at Balloon Fest. But either way, it was a phenomenal balloon. He flew beautifully despite the weather, and yeah, it was just awesome to see him back.
Yeah, from one newcomer to another, I'd like to talk about Goku for a second. Um, Goku was flying as one of the highest balloons in the parade this year, flying around 40 to 45 feet. That is from what my friend told me, who is on flight management and evidently was able to fly with Goku this year. Um, but yeah, they were one of the highest flying balloons in the parade this year, and Goku flew absolutely beautifully as well.
Yeah, I remember seeing him on Thanksgiving and just how high up he was. I was so happy. So props to the flight management team. It was just a great visual of a Goku flying down New York City. So, are there
Is
any
there
other
another?
balloons you want to mention?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that we saw a fully inflated Monkey D. Luffy as well as Beagle Scout Snoopy this year, um, which seeing them fully inflated, it looked a little weird, to be honest, since the last parade in 2023. Both of their brims were deflated. Um, but no, something cool about the Monkey D. Luffy balloon is you could see the scar on the side of the hat from the Macy's team rebuilding that brim on the hat, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's on the event media site. I think for those who want to see it, it was taken from the media platform at the parade starting line, and it's like really high quality. You can see just about where it was torn, but yeah, seeing both Monkey D. Luffy and Beagle Scout Snoopy survive this year was fantastic. I think all of us on parade day, because of the weather, we were on pins and needles waiting to see those two balloons, seeing if they would make it without make it without incidents, and we were all very pleased to see them survive.
Yeah, we were very happy to see every balloon survive this year. Besides obviously Nora, but no, it was a great year with the wins. They were anticipating high. single digit to low double digit wins, but from what I heard, there was barely any wins this year, which was really really good.
I should also, speaking of the wins, I was reading a comment, I think it was on Facebook, of someone who was working on the communications team for the parade, and they were getting wind readings of like 35 miles per hour gusts. But I mean, it was a little bit windy before the parade stepped off. I noticed in some live streams, but it was overall, it was a, despite the rain, there was practically no wind.
Do we want to talk about the inflation accident with Bluey?
I mean, yeah, sure, why not? So yeah, Bluey went kablooey, kablooey, I guess.
So yeah, Bluey went kablooey. So from multiple reports, obviously there is no real footage of it happening. There's just footage of streamers from YouTube channels and TikTok around the balloon, saying that they basically overinflated the chamber that is the hand of Bluey, and the person who inflating it wasn't paying attention, and there was a person running over to kind of stop them from overinflating the balloon, and they were a little too late and the hand popped. uh the Macy's inflation team was very very quick to repair the hand. It was repaired within about 30 minutes of the accident. So Bluey was able to fly, but the hand was a little deflated.
Yeah, and I should mention I did like that when the hand popped and they were repairing it, they sort of rolled her storage crate in front of the hand like it was a crime scene. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I honestly thought that was a pretty funny add to it, because you got little kids and they don't know what's going on, so they might start thinking the worst for Bluey. But no, she was able to fly, and it was a great day.
And speaking of Bluey, I guess while we're on the topic, an incredibly popular unit, evidently, that debuted this year was the Granny's car. And from what I've seen on social media, it was an absolute massive hit, and everyone adored it.
Yeah, the granny car was a very very massive hit over social media for the parade, when you had Gladys and Rita driving it, and it was honestly a really cool unit now being added to the parade. So basically, ever since Bluey has joined the parade, there's been a new unit to join the balloon every year.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll continue that tradition this year, but with the Bluey movie coming out in 2027, who knows? Maybe the entire parade will be Bluey by then. You never know.
Macy's throws curveballs, so we'll never know.
And then moving on from the balloons, I guess we can talk about all of the floats that appeared this year.
Yes, I'd like to start off with the Bronx Zoo float. Um, I was very, very excited, to say the least, about this balloon. Or, sorry, hold on. I was very excited to see this float debut in the parade. It had three different biomes that you could see at the Bronx Zoo, and the performance on it from Idina Menzel blew me away. It was an amazing performance, which obviously, if you live out in the New York City area, you could see Idina Menzel's new musical Redwood hit Broadway next month. So it will be a really cool show to see, from hearing the music from this Broadway. So I think it'll be something exciting to see.
And speaking of the Bronx Zoo, I want to take a moment to mention the costumes of the stilt walkers that marched with the Bronx Zoo float. They were absolutely gorgeous. I've been getting really into noticing like the small details of the costumes in recent years, and these were just incredible stilt walker costumes. I love them. They're incredible, and I hope after the float retires, maybe they can bring back the safari clowns and have the stilt walkers appear with that group.
That would be that's something that I've been thinking about as well. If they can have the safari clowns come back.
Uh,
Is there any floats you want to talk about?
Oh, I guess I can mention the Gift of Freedom float that came back. It was the first time it was in the parade since
Um,
2012, and had a very fun performance with Loud Luxury. and of course the WNBA superstars, the New York Liberty, with their mascot Ellie the Elephant.
Yes, it was great to see this float come back for the first time in 12 years. Um, but if I paid attention to Loud Luxury's social media after the parade, and they posted a video saying that they almost missed their performance. Basically, they made it down to their float as the float was turning the corner onto 34th Street. So they nearly missed their performance live on NBC.
Yeah, that's one of the many perils of such a big event like this. Things like that are bound to happen. But thankfully, they made it on the float, and it was a nice little different sort of performance because they didn't sing or anything because they're DJs, so
Mm-hmm.
they sort of had the turntables, and it definitely fit the aesthetic they were going for. It's like the kind of performance you'd see at like a basketball game, I guess, what they were going for.
Yeah, which really brought the energy to the parade. And not to mention, almost every single performance this year on a float had a performance group with them. So it looks like Macy's is kind of turning from, just having the Kilgore College Rangerettes. And this year they had Daisha and the Kilgore College Rangerettes. They had Kylie Cantrell with Boss Kids. It was really cool to see the performance groups getting mixed in with the performances from the guest stars on the floats.
Yeah, definitely. They also had the Macy's House Dancers, which was a performance group created especially for the parade, and they performed with the Tom Turkey float. They performed with Toys R Us, Kalahari, and Peacock. And of course with Tiptoe just before Santa came into Herald Square. And I mean, learning all that choreography for 5 floats. First of all, hats off to them. That was incredible. But also, I really like
Yeah,
the
it had every single performance this year was amazing.
yeah, and then I really like them introducing the performance groups to the floats because it makes them feel much more like production numbers and not just like some celebrity dawdling around on a float singing.
Yeah. And speaking about um, Daisha and Kilgore College Rangerettes, that brings me to one of the most funniest kind of fails in the parade was Daisha when she was singing her hit song "Austin Boots Stop Working." Um, at the end of the performance, you could see her lipstick was smeared everywhere, which was pretty funny. But no, the performance with the dance, it was probably one of my favorite performances in the parade. But yeah, it was really cool to see, you know, the a singer back on the big city cheer float, which was really cool.
I'm sure that has nothing to do with your fixation towards country girls. On that topic, Dasha, I'm single. If you're watching this, I wouldn't leave my bags unpacked and leave you waiting. You know, just
Yep, Jay.
putting
We
that
we
out
can
there.
yeah, we get it. We get it. Yep.
Just saying. Anyway, next float we should talk about. Oh boy, this is a. The next float I want to talk about is the Strikes Again float from Go Bowling. I can't believe I almost forgot about this one. Man, what an incredible float. I remember when this was first announced, Evan was like, "Oh no, I don't like it that much. It looks kind of spooky." But when I read that it was going to be like a working animatronic, I was like, "Okay, this is Kino."
Yeah, and something cool from behind the scenes with this float is one of my friends, a part of flight management, her cousin's husband was able to supply the studio with kind of the electronics to power this float, which was really awesome to kind of see, when your friends have some sort of connection to a float. And honestly, I was very happy with how this float turned out.
I especially like that they had the special characters of the bowling pins to act out as if when Penelope, which is the bowler's name, when she sort of mimicked throwing the ball, they would scatter. I love when floats are interactive like this.
Yeah, it was a really cool float. So that basically means that it's a second float in the parade's history that is not pulled by a Ram truck, which is really, really cool. And I hope Macy's kind of turns towards kind of building floats that aren't pulled by Ram trucks.
Speaking of floats that aren't pulled by Ram trucks, another float that I was extremely happy to see come back this year was the Santaland Express, and thankfully, uh, it made it down the parade route without a problem, and Jimmy Fallon and the
Thankfully.
Roots performed on it. It was awesome. You know, that was just like with Luffy and Snoopy. It was another one of those elements that were on pins and needles, hoping it wouldn't break down. You know, anywhere along the route bus. But yeah, it was awesome to finally see it pass through Herald Square for the first time in like 10 years, basically.
Yeah, and you know, ever since the parade, the song that they performed on the float has been stuck in my head and it will not get out of it, which I'm kind of happy it hasn't yet because it is such a really good song.
Yeah, it is a great song. I know people like make fun of Jimmy Fallon, you know, 'cause kind of rightfully at some points, but you know, when it comes to like performing in the parade, he gives these like a really campy performance, which I'm all about campy performances, so I'm a big fan of him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him coming back to the parade every year. And, before he gets on his float, he does an interview with Hoda and Savannah pre-parade. So it's really, really cool that they're kind of really getting Jimmy Fallon involved in the telecast of the parade.
And you know, the thing I like about Jimmy Fallon is that you know there's rumors about him, you know, being little bit heavy with the bottle, so to speak. And I think whenever you know he acts eccentrically at the parade, I like to think you know he was out on Thanksgiving Eve, just sort of you know having some wild turkey. If you catch my drift.
I'm catching it really, really good.
Yeah,
And another thing that seems to be, not wow, regist, another thing that people do not sort of get about the parade is the performances do have to be lip sync. Even though there were a couple performances that were not lip synced, but kind of with the weather this year and the performers being on a moving float, they kind of do have to be pre-recorded, and that's something that I've been seeing on social media the past few years is people kind of bashing the parade for having the guest stars lip sync and kind of like make fun of the performers for saying something after their song like Happy Thanksgiving and you can't hear them and stuff like that. It's something that Macy's has done for years and it's something that you can't really change overnight.
yeah. I just want to say this is like one of my biggest pet peeves on social media. It's like, oh my god, everyone's lip sync. It's like, yes, you dumb ape. They have to lip sync. Do you not understand the scale of this production and the weather in New York City, getting those audio feeds to line up exactly, making sure they go off without a flaw? I could t- tell him till I'm blue in the face and like bash my head against a wall, and yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's honestly, you know, one of the things that kind of makes me a little mad about kind of like the media and stuff like that. Just kind of like, bashing Macy's and NBC for like quote unquote making them. If you obviously you can't see me right now, I'm doing air quotes during around the making uh them lip sync, but it's something people don't get, and it's something that's been in the parade for years. So
Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about this before I start frothing at the mouth, and I have to be restrained. So, the next float I'd like to talk about is the Pass the Night by Rayo's. I know this was a float everyone was super super excited for before the parade.
me especially, I
Yes,
absolutely loved Pasta Night.
yes, the whole concept of you know the Al Dente running his rigatoni pony to feed a big pasta dragon who breathes actual fire. By the way, genuine fire. It was an incredible float, and you know Rachel Platt performing "Fight Song" on the float was extremely fitting. It was just a great performance all around.
And yeah, having Rachel Platten on the pasta night was really cool, singing obviously Fight Song and I Don't Really Care, Set Me Free. Obviously, if you haven't really been involved with Rachel Platten, she's been through a couple of things the past few years, kind of battling addiction and stuff like that. And to kind of see her, sing Fight Song and, releasing that new album, it kind of, let everybody know, hey, I'm safe, I'm doing well, and that's something I like to see out of Rachel Platten. And also, she did announce that she will be going on tour here shortly, which is really really cool.
And another thing I noticed about the performance when I first watched it, when she is performing, because of the weather, of course, they unfortunately couldn't have the full fire feature of the dragon, so they had smoke instead. And I guess whoever was, setting off the smoke was a little trigger happy because all Rachel Platten up there was just trying to perform and she kept having to move out of the way and, like, smack the smoke out of her face just to. It was pretty funny, honestly.
Yeah, it was really funny. She posted something on Instagram mentioning, how she was battling singing and the smoke at the same time. But it's having floats with features like that in the parade. It's always fun.
So, is that everything for floats?
There is one more float I would like to uh talk about is the Palace of Sweets with Joey McIntyre on it from he was from what?
New
What
Kids
what
on the
band
Block.
was he from?
New Kids on the Block.
New New Kids on the Block. That is another performance that has been stuck in my head since Parade Day. Um and he performed it really well. I really really loved how he matched his suit to the essence of the float, which was another good touch to the parade and the float itself.
Yeah, while we're talking about Brock's, I, I just want to take a moment to say, you know what, I love this float, all the little details, and, like, it very much reminds me of the Candy House float they had in the parade in the 80s and 90s. I love it. I love it so much.
And I think that's where we move on to our next element.
Before we move on from the floats, actually, I do want to take a moment to mention the garage that appeared this year to celebrate SpongeBob's 25th anniversary, and it was a surprise to everyone. We knew Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, was going to be in the garage, but what we did know is that he would be appearing as the one and only Patchy the Pirate.
Yeah, seeing, because when you think Tom Kenny, you're like, oh, he's gonna be dressed as SpongeBob and he's gonna be, doing his SpongeBob voice. But it was really, like kind of like a twist to kind of see him as Patchy the Pirate. Um, but another thing I'd like to mention about it is, the concept art of this float was, it kind of looked like it was going to be bigger to me, and then I saw it and it was a little smaller, so I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm fine with that still. And when he made it down to 34th Street and he did his Patchy the Pirate voice and did his SpongeBob voice, it was really really cool.
Yeah, and speaking of the garage, one of our friends was recently at the American Dream Mall in New Jersey, and he noticed that the garage was actually on display there, so it still lives on, even though it might not appear in the parade anymore.
Yeah, I think it was only made to celebrate SpongeBob's 25th anniversary.
And then after the floats, I guess we can go over some of the marching band performances we really liked.
Yes, so I'd like to start us off here with one of my favorite bands in the parade this year, the Flower Mound High School Marching Band from Flower Mound, Texas. They performed a little excerpt of their Bands of America performance that gave them a third place finish this past year. I really liked the costumes, and not to mention, it was a number dedicated to Yayoi Kusama, who evidently had a balloon fly in our parade. It was made in 2019, but did not get to fly in 2019 because of the damage it sustained the night before the parade. So it flew in the reimagined parade in 2020. But no, it was a cool performance. Really loved the polka dots. Really loved the red wigs. And it was also something cool because I got a lot of insight from one of the band members that was on the band. She's on the Flower Mound color guard, and she gave me a lot of insight on the band and kind of like their performance and everything, and it was really really cool to see.
And speaking of high school bands, I'd say the band I was most excited for this year was the Avon Marching Black and Gold because the concept of their performance, it was incredible. It was called Holiday Tableau, and basically, it was a whole bunch of like classic Christmas movies like Home Alone, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Christmas Story. They took songs from all of those and combined them into a really cool performance where they were meant to represent like living art. So they wore these band uniforms that were inspired by still paintings, and they had like frame props in Herald Square, and they had the dancers like acting out scenes of them as if they were living art. It was an incredible concept. I can see why they're so highly acclaimed as a band.
Yeah, I was really really excited about Avon's performance as well, and they played really really well down the route and on 34th Street.
And one more band I want to mention is the Majestic Merchant Cardinals of Jonesboro High School because if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of show bands, and you can't get much more of a show band than the Majestic Merchant Cardinals. Their performance, it was incredible. I loved it.
Top notch. It kind of reminded me of the uh, the Alabama A&M University's performance in 2023. And they are a smaller band, but they had that big band feel, and they brought a lot of energy to parade morning, which really really what I really really like about show bands is the amount of energy that they bring to their performances, and they brought a lot of energy.
And then
And another band I would like to talk about is the University of West Virginia Mountaineers marching band. Um, their performance, being the last band of the parade. It was a really really cool performance. I think the last time they performed was, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 2016.
that's right, yeah, and they actually led the parade this year, so they went from leading the parade to closing it out with Santa last year.
Yeah, so it was a soaking wet day. They probably were the most soaking wet band in the parade, I would probably imagine, um, because it did rain the entire parade. But you know, it was really really cool. Their performance was amazing. All of the bands did amazing this year. And always every year, they're anticipating their performances because they're notified about their acceptance into the parade about a year and a half in advance. Um, so every year you know, the bands are putting on a show, and they are there to showcase what they do best, and that is be a great marching band, and they're going to show you why Macy's chose them to march in the parade.
And while we're on the topic of bands, I want to give a quick shout out to our friend Auburn, who was in the UMass band. She was incredible leading up to the parade. She was like giving us updates about rehearsals and showing us where the band was going in New York. So, shout out to her. Also known as Frank House Facts on Twitter. Follow her. Oh yeah,
And obviously, I'd like to give a shout out to my friend from the Flower Mound band, Chloe, who gave me all the insights on their performance and what time they were rehearsing, and keeping me up to date with the band. So shout out to her as well.
yeah. She actually asked me this morning where she could watch the episodes. So, hello, Chloe. Here are the
Yeah, hello,
episodes.
Chloe. You're here on my YouTube channel, so here's where you can watch all of the Parade People podcasts, and yeah, we're lucky to I was lucky enough to be able to meet you, and you know, you give me insight on your performance. So very thankful that I was able to meet you, and obviously kind of bond as a friendship, and give me the insight of your performance. So I really really appreciate that.
And I'm sure listening to this podcast, your disappointment is immeasurable. So moving on to the guest stars, we had a great lineup of guest stars this year. I think the one you probably want to talk about the most is the Temptations on the Wonder Flows.
Yes, yes. Obviously, we've had Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations twice back to back years in 2019 and 2020. And now we have the true Temptations performing in the parade. And they performed my favorite Temptations song, My Girl. And obviously, you're not going to see a lot of movement from them because, they're on the older side. They've been a band since I think the 70s, 80s. So they've been around for a very long time, and it was a absolute delight to finally see them in the parade again.
Yeah, the last time they appeared was 1971. They've been around since like the 60s, and only one of the original members is still part of the group. He's something like 82 years old now, I think. So the fact that he's still,
Yeah,
performing is incredible.
yeah. So there, it was so good to see the Temptations in the parade
And so
again for the first time in over what 50 years, 40 years.
it was 1971, so yeah, over 50 years. And I should mention, speaking of 1971, that's a pretty infamous parade for because of its weather, and it seems 2024 is not that it was windy in 2024 like it was in 1971, but both times that the Temptations appeared, it was an absolutely driving rain. So just thought I'd mention this.
And another uh, guest star I'd like to talk about is our opening number from with the parade this year, Billy Porter, who sang the song from Wicked, "Ease on Down the Road." Um, there was a lot of Wicked kind of promotion in the parade this year, obviously, because the movie did come out a day or two before the parade. So the movie was fresh. So they obviously had Elphaba, which was played by the absolutely amazing actor Cynthia Erivo. They had her on the telecast twice this year. Um, but no, it was really cool to see Billy Porter come back to the parade as well. His performance was amazing. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna let Jay talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, just a minor correction. The song was actually from The Wiz, but in the same Wizard of Oz
Same
universe.
category,
Yeah,
right?
but yeah, on the topic of Wicked, they being a Universal film, which also owned NBC, it was going to get lots of airtime. But one really nice moment I wanted to mention was that when Cynthia Erivo first appeared in around this halfway point of the parade, she actually gave Hoda Kotb flowers because it was Hoda's last time hosting the parade, and she actually just left a week ago as of recording this, I think.
Yeah, she did leave last Friday as we are recording this. So obviously she's probably not gonna watch this, but if somehow it gets to her, I'd like to thank her for her past 7 parades of fun. I was there live for her first parade in 2018. Um, she brings the energy every morning. But she's probably going to go down as one of my favorite hosts in history. So I wish her a healthy and happy retirement, and I'm very very excited to see what she does in the future.
And then the next performance I'd like to talk about is one that I was quite surprised with how much I liked it, but it was Bishop Briggs on the Wednesday float. She sang Painted Black, which was a cover, of course, the Rolling Stones' famous song. And I think what made the float for me was the performance group that appeared with it, Move NYC. They did a phenomenal
Yeah,
job, like acting as if they were all like one what they were going for basically is to act as if they were like one like creature, I guess. So they all move very similarly and they like twitched about. It was really really cool and fit perfectly with the theme of the flows.
Yeah, they were really into their role there with the Wednesday float, and you know they played it really well. Their acting and dancing was incredible. So hats off to the Move NYC team.
And another thing I should mention is that even the performer Bishop Riggs got into the act because throughout much of the parade route, she was very much in character as like the Wednesday Adams with the crossed arms and the serious look. It was a great float, and it's a shame that it's probably only going to appear once because it's awesome.
Yeah, and also not to mention, if you guys did notice that there were no banner carriers for the floats, it's because the banner carriers turned into kind of like these mini banners that were in the bed of the Ram trucks. So basically, both sides of the streets could see, you know, the banner, uh, so they know which performers performing on the float, and then they were taken off before the float got to 34th Street.
Oh yeah, I quite like the truck banners, I guess I'd call them. I do miss the banner carriers a bit, but it does make more sense having them on the sides of the float so both sides can see clearly, even if they're like a bit farther back. The only problem is like with floats like Tom Turkey that doesn't have a float in front of us. Unfortunately, whoever's on that float doesn't get a banner, which kind of sucks. But hopefully they find a workaround for that.
And speaking about Tom Turkey, I would like to talk about the performances, um, or the performance from Charlie D'Amelio and the Macy's House Dancers. They performed to a very, very old song called Dunkashane, which has also been stuck in my head since Parade Day. Um, and honestly, it was a great performance. Loved watching the confetti fall while they were doing their performance, and then obviously while Tom Turkey was making his way onto the street decal, he got absolutely covered in confetti.
Yeah, I do want to mention about the opening song. I remember when I first heard it, I was like, "Oh wow, this woman's doing a really nice job singing the song." Anyway, turns out it's a 21-year-old Wayne Newton. I thought he had just a very feminine voice, but regardless, it's a great performance. It's a great song too. I've been listening to it quite a bit recently.
Yeah, I had it on replay. I had it on repeat in my AirPods today at school. So I just absolutely love that song now.
And then the next performance is another one that was an absolute home run this year, but T Pain on the Genio flows.
Yeah, his little four-song melody uh he had there on the Genio float, kind of combining those four songs together. It's gonna be a hard task, but T-Pain, nothing gets past T-Pain. He is a all-around great performer.
And this was a another float that had a really great choreographed number to accompany us.
Yeah, the number, it was another great choreographed dance with this float, and yeah, just really really good spectacle. And then now I'd like to talk about another great performance from our mid parade marquee performance, which was Kylie Minogue singing "Can't Get You Out of My Head" in her new song. I think it's called Pandem.
Padum, yeah.
Yeah, padum padum. Yeah, that song. Um, so it's they. She kind of had the same stage that I believe Jennifer Hudson performed on. Correct?
Cheated, yeah.
So, yeah, it was another. I love how Macy's is kind of incorporating those special performances into the parade. Um, I feel like it's gonna be a mainstay in the parade now. which I really hope that they keep in the parade. So, um, yeah, I just like how they had two um, parade, like two special parade performances this year. So yeah, it was really really cool.
And speaking of Kylie Minogue's performance, one part I really liked was all the costumes that performance group and the dancers and that she had on. It was, I don't know how to describe it. I guess the closest word I can think of at the moment is like anime esque, but like the dancers had on these like big gray futuristic looking lab coats. It was wacky. It was cool though.
Yeah, it was. It was. I really liked the costumes that the performers were wearing, as well as Kylie. But that was her first parade that she's performed in since I think 2010. So, um, just kind of having her return to the parade was really really cool.
And another performance that was sort of made headlines this year, I guess, was the Warren Treaty on Balsam Hill's float because, as Alex mentioned earlier, there was a bit of a technical difficulty during her performance.
Yes. So, while our hosts were announcing the Warren Treaty, the music, the background music cut cut out in between their kind of like introduction into the Warren Treaty, and then obviously there was around, I'd say, 15 to 20 seconds of just pure silence. And then they came back and were like, "Hey, there's a few technical difficulties. We'll come back after this commercial break with the music and stuff." The commercial break wasn't that long, but in the meantime, they did show that pre-recorded tape of Extraordinary Nora and the Elf on the Shelf.
Yeah, and because they went into a commercial break early, they had to sort of miss out on one between Hudson's performance and like Tiptoe and Santa. So it's impressive because it sort of was you couldn't really notice if you weren't paying attention, I guess. But they went somewhat seamlessly from Jennifer Hudson's performance and all of the parade elements that were behind her coming through before Tiptoe. They did a great job, I think, in spite of the difficulties.
Yeah, in spite of the difficulties, they did an amazing job, kind of, kind of stalling a little bit. It was they did great. Obviously, they had that interview with Cynthia Erivo, um, but I think it was between Jennifer Hudson and Tiptoe, right? Or was it before and between Tiptoe and Jennifer
It
Hudson?
was after Jennifer Hudson.
Yeah, so um, yeah, they did an amazing job, kind of doing kind of like an impromptu act there. So props to everyone at NBC and Macy's.
And speaking of Jennifer Hudson, I guess we should talk about her performance. I know Alex mentioned to me that he thought it was a better performance than Cher, which, them's be fighting words, but I'll let you explain why you think that.
So obviously, if you guys did notice this year, there was kind of a cutout in the stands under the marquee, as you had the Rockettes and you had Kylie Minogue as well as Jennifer Hudson come from that red carpet, with that kind of with that door background, as well, and also Savannah and Hoda did a interview under the marquee. So I really liked this performance because of her. I really liked her kind of rendition on Jingle Bells, as she said at the start of the song. You've never heard Jingle Bells quite like this. Um, and obviously, Let There Be Joy was another great performance. I kind of liked the kind of mellow to hype feel to that song. But all around, it was a great performance from Jennifer Hudson. And yes, I will forever say, listen to me when I say this. I will forever say it was a better performance than Cher in 2023. Come at me.
And that means we can discredit every opinion you've ever held and ever will hold. So, yeah, great stuff.
Is there any other guest stars you'd like to talk about?
I think that's a bit. Oh, I guess we should mention that. Unfortunately, this year the Macy's Singing Christmas Tree didn't appear, but the Macy's Choir did appear on the uh, Winter Wonderland in Central Park float with Sebastian Yatra, who was going to appear in the 2020 parade, but wasn't able to. But thankfully, he finally appeared again this year.
Yeah, I kind of liked his English Spanish version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Uh, Great performance. I really loved the choir as well. But it is kind of sad to see that the Macy's Singing Christmas Tree did not appear this year. As a lot of people anticipate to see the Singing Christmas Tree every year, so um, it was kind of sad to see the Singing Christmas Tree retire.
And then I guess the last thing we can get into is the pre-parade acts, which this year I think they were all phenomenal. They were incredible, especially Circus Vasquez. It reminded me so much of the pre-parade circus acts they had back in like the 60s and 70s. That was amazing. I loved it, especially with that big sort
Yeah,
of, I'm not sure what you'd call it. It's like a, I don't know, a wheel of doom or whatever, but they had like
kind of like a
unicyclists
carnival
and
ride. I
yeah,
like I like to think of it as a carnival ride.
yeah, I guess so. It was, but they had like unicyclists and acrobats and jugglers and you name it, they had it. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a great performance that I feel like just because of the music cutting out at where it did, I feel like it was cut short, to be honest.
I think it was like that at rehearsal for whatever reason. It was an odd choice, but even if it was cut short, regardless, it was a great performance.
Yeah, and obviously since we're on the topic of pre-parade acts right now, um, something I liked that Macy's did this year is have the kind of like the main character of each of the Broadway performances sing live at the parade, which was honestly something that I really, really liked about this year's parade is that the main character of the Broadway shows were singing live.
Yeah, on that topic, I know a musical we've practically fell in love with at this point was the Outsiders, because like every time we're on a voice chat, I can hear what's in your background. It's like, is that Tulsa '67?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I absolutely fell in love with the Outsiders after the parade. Their the performance was top notch. With them performing Tulsa '67. I really loved how Ponyboy Curtis started out in the stands. And then something cool with obviously him singing live is you can kind of hear the daps from when he was shaking hands, when he kind of did his handshake with that kid in the stands, and then did that handshake with one of the characters in the Broadway show. And something cool that they did with the Outsiders is they had two of the actors from the musical do an interview in the parade before their performance, which was something really really cool that I think Macy's put in this year.
And then another slam dunk performance this year was Hell's Kitchen, the musical based on Alicia Keys' life.
Yeah, their performance was Empire's State of Mind and the Gospel. I really liked this musical as well. Uh, the choreograph to this musical, like the dance break that they had, was really, really cool. It's another musical I fell in love with this year. Um, so yeah, I was really, really happy about the Broadway list this year.
Yeah, and rounding out the performances this year was Death Becomes Her, which is a musical comedy that's on Broadway at the moment. And another cool thing that they did was they had two of the main characters who weren't in the number that was being performed, but they still wanted to feature them. They introduced it, and I don't think they've really done that before, but I definitely liked it.
They've had, I think the only instance I can think about where they had someone other than our hosts kind of introduce the show was Carrie Underwood in 2020 or in 2013 um, with The Sound of Music.
Yeah, sure. That wasn't even on Broadway. That was just one of them live musicals that NBC did. But regardless, it
Yeah,
was a nice feature to have for a change.
yeah. Like I said multiple times, I really, really loved the Broadway list this year.
Yeah, there was they had fewer than usual. They usually like 4 or 5. This year they only had 3, but they were 3 extremely strong choices, so I can't complain.
Me neither.
And I guess before we wrap things up, we should mention just a few little things that don't necessarily fit in the criteria of what we mentioned. But one thing I almost forgot about was that the parade had a new production team this year. It was Silent Hill Productions. For the past like 30 years or so, it was Brad Lockman Productions that were producers on it. But this year, Silent House took over, and they introduced like a lot of really cool things. Like they had the intro, I guess I should mention, instead of having like the uptown shot with like the names scrolling across the screen, they had them almost as if they were billboards around the city. It was so cool.
Yeah, it's something I really liked about the production of the parade this year, and I also like how they had kind of like that four kind of camera shots before the commercial breaks, as well as having the countdown to Santa clock in the top right corner.
Yeah, that reminds me of the parade countdown they had back in like 2008, I think it was. Like in the first hour, they were like, "Oh, they had a countdown." It was like, "Oh, this is when the parade's coming." But I think it's even more exciting to have a Santa countdown meter instead.
Yeah, it kind of that's what it kind of reminded me of, and I also like how they're really really getting into the designing of the parade with Matson Creative, obviously adding kind of like his art uh, of the parade into the telecast, which is really really cool.
Yeah, and with speaking of Madsen Creative, I do want to give a shout out to the Madsen Creative team and the Macy Studios design team because as an aspiring graphic designer who is studying graphic design in college right now, their work has been hugely inspirational to me, and it's just like seeing it go from what it was last year. You know, they used like a lot of purple last year, but this year I think they really elevated it because they used a lot of red, and introducing that red introduced a lot of warmth to the advertising and branding, and I prefer it a lot more than purple.
And not to mention about the red, I also love the barrier covers that they had this year with it saying Macy's and then having uh, the logos of NBC and Peacock. As I guess most people did not realize this year is that CBS was not on the coverage of the parade this year. So NBC did gain a new spot at the parade, being Columbus Circle. Um, so it was really really cool to kind of see that extensive look at the parade with them having a camera at Columbus Circle, at Radio City Music Hall, and all along the parade route.
I guess there's a few things I want to mention. I guess first and foremost, the new tricolor and inflatable costumes they had this year, Lox and Java, the bagel and the coffee cup, and two pigeons, Cookie and Crouton. Incredible unit, just incredible. That's all I'm gonna say. They were incredible.
Yeah, they were phenomenal units. And yeah, that's really all I could say about them is they were absolutely phenomenal. I but before we wrap things up here, I'd like to thank Macy's and NBC for making this parade one of my favorite parades of the decade. Um, as we're suiting up for our 99th Macy's parade this year, I just really, really want to give them a huge shout out with how they ran the parade this year and how the parade was done. So, it was something that I've it's something that is great to watch every year, and they made it a true spectacle this year. So I want to give my hats off to NBC and Macy's.
And I'd also like to extend that to just all the parade participants that braved the rain and showed up and marched without, a single complaint. They put on one hell of a show.
Yeah, it was. It's the volunteers that makes the parade, and you know, it's something every year that I love watching, and I think this year it was about 5,000 volunteers.
I think in total, yeah. And then there was like the a couple thousand more in the performance groups and the marching bands.
Yeah, so it was a great all hands around production of the parade this year. So it was a great parade to watch, and I was super excited to be able to be kind of in this community, and I was really blessed to be able to hit 1,000 followers on parade day. I gained, I think, over 200 to maybe 300 followers that day. So I just want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching and liking my content, and sticking with me and Jay here, as me, him, and our pal Apple. We had a lot of fun this year, kind of bringing you news and fun facts about the parade. So it was really really cool.
But yeah, so of course, Happy New Year too. Hopefully this year we're a bit more on track with the podcast. But yeah, I guess that's about it for this episode. Next episode, we have a very exciting one because we'll be joined by our first ever guest. We'll be joined by a member of the Macy's Great American Marching Band. Auditions for that opened up recently, so we decided, hey, why not make an episode, with a former member talking about their experience and maybe they can give advice to those who are looking forward to signing up for it this year.
Yes, and to kind of piggyback on registration opening for the Macy's Great American Marching Band, you can head to either my Instagram account or the Macy's Parade Wiki Instagram account to kind of get more insight and more info on the Macy's Great American Marching Band. I would like to know, I would like you guys to know that registration will close at the end of every single month up until September 30th. And if you are a returning member of the band, you have to have your audition in by February 15th.
So yeah, thank you again for watching this episode. Hope you all enjoyed. But yeah, we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.